Hash the boy who saved a stranger. Tommy ran out of the house as fast as his legs could carry him, both arms thrown over his head like he always did. It was a habit he'd learned the hard way, something his body just did whenever things turned ugly inside those thin walls. His father had been drinking again, not sipping, not a beer with dinner, but drinking the way that turned him into someone else entirely. Someone who screamed, someone who threw things, someone who hit whoever was closest. His mother tried to stop him sometimes, but she was tired too, and scared, and some nights she screamed right back, only on the nights she hadn't been drinking herself. This time, 9-year-old Tommy didn't stick around to see how it would end. He slipped into the backyard, trying to figure out where to disappear to. His stomach ached with hunger, and there was nothing in the kitchen anyway. It was payday, but his father had already spent the money on bottles before the sun even came up. Tommy looked up at the sky. Still early. The other kids on the block wouldn't be out for another 2 hours at least, so there was no one to play with, nowhere to belong for now. He decided to walk toward the diner a few blocks over, the one with the open patio where the wealthier families sat and ate breakfast in the sun. He'd been there before. Sometimes kind strangers slipped him food, or a few coins, or just enough cash to matter. Some people looked right through him like he wasn't there. Others caught the sadness on his face and the emptiness in his hands and couldn't just walk past. He never turned down food, not once, even if his stomach was already full, he'd keep eating because he never knew when the next meal would come. He wasn't ashamed of it either. Those rich folks would forget his face in a minute anyway, and he wasn't angry at the world for it. On his street, every kid had a father who drank. It was just how things were. His mother used to tell him it came from hopelessness, no jobs, no schooling, no way out. She scrubbed floors for a living. His father worked nights as a security guard. Neither of them made much, and neither had ever really had the chance to. Most of the block was the same story, over and over. A handful of families didn't drink, didn't fight, kept their kids clean and quiet and reading books nobody made them read, and everyone else thought they were strange for it. Those families never stayed long. The second they had a way out, they took it, and the neighbors were almost relieved to see them go. Nobody around here liked change. They liked things exactly as broken as they'd always been. As Tommy got closer to the diner, a car caught his eye, one he recognized instantly, with a distinctive silver stripe running down the hood. He smiled without meaning to. That car belonged to a man who had once been kind to him in a way Tommy had never forgotten. Months earlier, that same man had spotted Tommy sitting near the diner with a swollen bruise under his eye, the result of a fight with some older boys, and then, later that same night, a beating from his father on top of it. His face had been puffy, his eyes red from crying. The man had pulled over, leaned out, and asked simply, "Rough day, huh?" Tommy hadn't known what to say. Then the man handed him more money than he'd ever held in his life, told him to buy something nice for himself and save the rest. Tommy could barely believe it. He gripped those bills so tight his knuckles went white, and he smiled, really smiled, for the first time in what felt like weeks. That money lasted him almost 2 weeks. He never forgot the man's face. He'd spotted the car a few times since, but always kept his distance, a little embarrassed, not wanting to seem like he was begging for more. But today the car was parked outside again, and the man was seated on the patio with 2 other men in sharp suits, clearly in the middle of something serious. Tommy hung back and watched quietly from a distance. The man's name was Robert Hayes, and he wasn't in a good mood that morning. He just had a fight with his 16-year-old daughter, Grace. She wanted to stay out late with her friends, and all he'd asked was that she check in, answer her phone. Grace didn't take it well. She told him she wasn't a little girl anymore and didn't need to be babysat. The argument had escalated fast. She said other fathers didn't call their daughters every 10 minutes. He said he had every right to check on her. She cried and told him he never actually listened. He only did whatever made him feel better. Robert felt sick about it because he loved his daughter more than anything in the world. Her mother had died when Grace was only 9, and after that, Robert had become almost unbearably protective. His wife had gotten sick, and he'd tried everything: doctors, specialists, treatments overseas, anything money could buy, and none of it had been enough. She died anyway, and the guilt never left him. He blamed himself for not catching the illness sooner, for not being there enough while there was still time. Every time Grace pushed back against him now, some part of him relived that failure all over again. That was the real reason behind the constant calls, the worry, the need to know she was safe. He'd even seen a therapist once who gently told him he was trying to fix something that had never actually been his fault. Sitting on that patio, Robert tried to shake it off and focus on the meeting in front of him. Two brothers had come to him with a business proposal, desperate for an investor to save their failing company. He'd already had them looked into and knew they were hiding things, but the idea itself was genuinely promising. He told them he'd only come on board on his own terms. He could see how cornered they were, and he knew it, and he was fully prepared to use it. The brothers looked nervous, sweating through their collars. Food had already been ordered for the table. One of them joked that a full stomach makes a man easier to negotiate with. Robert picked up his fork, and just as he was about to take the first bite, a small voice cut through the noise. "I wouldn't eat that if I were you," the voice said. Robert turned and found the same boy standing a few feet away, the one he'd helped months ago. Tommy looked serious and a little frightened. "Why not, kid?" Robert asked. Tommy answered plainly, "Because they put something in your food." Robert's eyes shot to the brothers, who went instantly red-faced and defensive, shouting at the boy, calling him a liar, telling him to get lost. But Robert stayed calm. He simply swapped his plate with one of the brothers' plates and asked, "You don't mind, do you?" The brother froze, couldn't answer. Robert watched him carefully, and that's when the second brother snapped, turning on his own sibling and shouting, "You said it would be fine, just one bite and he'd sign everything." The two of them started arguing right there at the table, in front of everyone. The restaurant manager came rushing over, and Robert quietly explained what had just happened. The manager nodded grimly, pulled the plate aside as evidence, and called the police. Robert turned back to Tommy and smiled. "Looks like you saved me today," he said. Tommy gave a shy little smile back. "Debt paid is debt settled," he said. Robert was stunned, words like that from a kid this young. He asked Tommy if he'd like to come home with him and meet his daughter. Tommy said there was no one waiting for him anyway. His parents were both passed out drunk at home, same as always. Robert didn't say anything to that. He just felt something heavy settle in his chest. What kind of life was this child living? When they got to the house, Grace had already calmed down from their fight. She stepped outside and looked at the small, dirty boy standing beside her father. "Who's this?" she asked. "This is Tommy," Robert said. "He saved me today." Grace's eyes went wide. "He did," Robert smiled and said they were both starving. Grace nodded and told them to go wash up while she set the table. Tommy was about to clean his hands the way he always did, spitting on them and wiping them on his jeans, but he stopped himself halfway. This house felt different. Warm. Clean. It smelled like something good was cooking. Dinner that night was full of laughter. Robert told Grace the whole story, and Tommy filled in the parts he'd seen with his own eyes. Grace hugged him like she was scared he'd vanish if she let go. After that day, Tommy started coming around often. If he disappeared for a few days, Robert would go looking for him. Sometimes his father wouldn't let him leave. Sometimes he was simply too hungry or too exhausted to make the walk. Tommy never talked much about what home was like, but they could tell it wasn't good. Grace decided he deserved better. She started handing him books, sitting with him, walking him through them page by page. He hated it at first. Then, slowly, he started to love it. With Grace explaining everything patiently, reading stopped feeling like a chore and started feeling like something worth doing. Robert gave him his own room in the house and told him he could stay whenever he needed to. Tommy even kept his new school uniform there, telling himself it just saved time. But really, he just didn't want to go back to the smell of smoke and liquor. Over time, it became impossible to ignore how sharp Tommy actually was. His teachers were stunned. He caught on faster than kids twice his age, faster than almost anyone in his class. Grace proudly shared every bit of his progress with Daniel, a teacher who'd started showing up around the house more and more often. Robert didn't mind Daniel one bit. He could see the man was decent and serious about doing right by people. Meanwhile, Robert quietly began the legal process of stripping away Tommy's parents' custody rights, working to become his legal guardian instead. He wanted Tommy to stay with them for good. Eventually, Tommy moved in permanently. He joined a sports club with Daniel's help. He still visited his parents from time to time, but Robert made sure it was always food that got sent over, never cash. Years later, at Grace's wedding, Tommy stood up in front of the whole room and read poems he'd written himself. They were beautiful, aching, full of feeling. There wasn't a dry eye in the place. In those poems, he called Grace his sister and Robert his father. Robert tried to hide the tears running down his face. Deep down, he knew that from that day forward, Tommy would never resent a single phone call again. He'd always be glad, every time, to hear his father's voice on the other end of the line.